In every corner of the world, there are secrets, stories that exist beyond understanding. Tonight, we uncover three terrifying haunted tales: Forgotten Airport, Military Hangar, Mega Cruise Terminal. This is episode 153 of Dynamic Dark. Put on your headphones and let the fear begin.
Today's first story is The Forgotten Airport. Ryan, Ethan, and Lucas enter an abandoned international airport that had been closed for more than 40 years after every flight suddenly disappeared without a trace. The massive terminal is completely silent. Broken luggage is scattered across the empty departure halls. Every boarding gate stands wide open. There isn't a single living person anywhere inside the airport. As they walk deeper into the terminal, every electronic departure board suddenly flickers back to life. One by one, every screen displays the same message. Flight 913, boarding now. A few seconds later, an automated boarding announcement echoes through the abandoned airport. Final boarding call for Flight 913. Ryan, Ethan, and Lucas slowly look at each other in confusion. Because they are the only people standing inside the entire airport. Ryan, Ethan, and Lucas slowly follow the glowing boarding signs toward Gate 13. The automated announcement continues repeating. Final boarding call for Flight 913. As the boarding gate slowly opens by itself, an old passenger aircraft is waiting outside, even though the airport has been abandoned for decades. The three friends carefully step inside the silent aircraft. The cabin is completely dark. But as their flashlights move across the rows of seats, they suddenly freeze in horror. Every single seat is occupied, not by living passengers, but by hundreds of silent dead passengers wearing old clothes from decades ago. Every one of them sits perfectly still with pale faces, lifeless eyes, and empty expressions, staring straight ahead without moving. Then, the cabin lights suddenly switch on by themselves. And the boarding announcement echoes one more time. All passengers prepare for departure. Ryan, Ethan, and Lucas slowly make their way toward the front of the aircraft. The cockpit door is tightly locked. Before anyone can touch it, the door slowly opens by itself. The cockpit is completely dark. Then, every instrument panel suddenly lights up. Sitting inside are two towering tall black featureless ghosts wearing faded commercial airline pilot uniforms. One is seated in the captain's chair. The other silently occupies the first officer's seat. Neither of them has a face, eyes, or mouth. Their bodies are nothing but living shadows. Without saying a single word, both black ghost pilots slowly place their hands on the flight controls. A few seconds later, every cockpit alarm begins flashing. Outside the aircraft, the runway lights suddenly illuminate one by one, as if Flight 913 is finally ready for departure. Within seconds, the entire aircraft begins to shake. The engines suddenly roar back to life after remaining silent for more than 40 years. Ryan, Ethan, and Lucas immediately run out of the aircraft onto the abandoned runway. As they look around, every single runway light suddenly turns on at the exact same moment. The massive airport is no longer dark. Then, they notice something standing in the distance. Dozens of tall black featureless ghosts are silently lined up along both sides of the runway. None of them move. None of them make a sound. They simply stand there, facing the aircraft, as if they are waiting for Flight 913 to depart. Moments later, the passenger aircraft slowly begins moving forward on its own while the two black ghost pilots remain inside the cockpit, preparing for takeoff. Inside the abandoned aircraft, the ghost pilots suddenly moved the controls. The engines roared louder as Flight 913 slowly accelerated down the runway. The cursed aircraft lifted silently into the dark night sky, disappearing above the abandoned airport. Inside the passenger cabin, every dead passenger remained perfectly still in their seats. No one moved. No one spoke. They simply stared forward as the impossible flight continued into the darkness. Back inside the forgotten airport terminal, the old departure board suddenly flickered back to life. The screen changed one final time. Flight 913 departed. Ryan, Ethan, and Lucas watched the message in complete silence, realizing that the flight they had just witnessed was never supposed to leave the airport. Believing the nightmare was finally over, Ryan, Ethan, and Lucas slowly walked away from the forgotten airport. The three friends reached the empty parking lot, hoping they had finally escaped the terrifying place. As they looked back one last time, the entire airport had disappeared into the darkness. No terminal, no runway, no abandoned aircraft. Only endless darkness remained where the airport once stood. Ryan, Ethan, and Lucas quickly got inside their car and started driving away. For a few moments, everything seemed normal. But then, Ryan looked into the rear-view mirror. His face froze. Sitting silently in the back seat were three tall black featureless ghosts. They weren't attacking. They weren't moving. They were simply sitting there waiting. Waiting for the journey to begin. Because the forgotten airport was never the place they were trying to escape from. It was the place that had followed them home. Today's second story is The Military Hangar. Noah, Mason, and Chloe entered a forgotten military airbase that had been abandoned after a classified operation disappeared without a trace. For decades, the entire base remained untouched. Giant aircraft hangars stood empty, underground bunkers stayed sealed, and the old control tower watched over the abandoned airfield. Inside the massive military facility, everything was frozen in time. Old military vehicles were covered in dust. Warning signs still hung on the walls. But as Noah, Mason, and Chloe explored deeper into the base, the silence was suddenly broken. Emergency sirens started echoing across the abandoned airfield. The control tower lights flickered back on. And somewhere inside the massive hangars, something that had been forgotten for decades had just awakened. Inside the first giant hangar, Noah, Mason, and Chloe discovered the remains of a forgotten military operation. Dozens of abandoned fighter jets stood perfectly aligned in complete darkness. The massive hangar looked untouched for decades, with dust covering every aircraft and old military equipment scattered across the floor. The silence inside the hangar was unnatural. As Noah, Mason, and Chloe slowly walked between the fighter jets, they noticed something terrifying. Every cockpit contained a motionless dead military pilot wearing a faded flight suit. The pilots were still sitting exactly where they had been during their final mission. Their hands remained near the controls, their helmets still on, and their bodies completely still. It looked as if they never returned from the operation they were sent to complete. Noah, Mason, and Chloe realized this abandoned hangar was not hiding empty aircraft. It was hiding the last moments of an entire military crew. As Noah, Mason, and Chloe moved deeper inside the massive hangar, something inside the abandoned fighter jets suddenly changed. The cockpit canopy of the lead fighter jet slowly opened by itself. A cold silence filled the entire hangar as they looked toward the aircraft. Inside the cockpit, two tall black featureless ghosts were sitting in the pilot and co-pilot positions. They were wearing worn military pilot flight suits and old aviation helmets, like the crew of a mission that never returned. One ghost silently occupied the pilot's seat, while the other sat beside it in the co-pilot position. Then, every cockpit instrument across the entire hangar suddenly turned on. The dark aircraft displays started glowing with a deep red light. Hundreds of fighter jets that had remained silent for decades were no longer abandoned. Something had awakened the forgotten military fleet. As Noah, Mason, and Chloe watched the military base come back to life, a terrifying sound echoed from beneath the ground. The massive underground bunker doors suddenly started opening after decades of silence. A cold wind escaped from the darkness below. Curious but terrified, the three explorers slowly looked inside the hidden command bunker. Deep underground, they discovered an abandoned war room frozen in time. Hundreds of dead soldiers remained at their battle stations, still wearing their old military uniforms and equipment. They sat motionless in front of communication systems, maps, and control panels, as if they were waiting for a mission that never ended. But what frightened Noah, Mason, and Chloe the most was what stood behind them. Tall black featureless ghosts silently surrounded the entire command bunker. They were standing behind every soldier, waiting for a single order to begin the forgotten battle again. A mechanical voice suddenly echoed across the abandoned military base. A cold automated message repeated through the speakers. Squadron ready for launch. For the first time in decades, the silent airbase came back to life. The massive hangar doors slowly began opening one by one. Dust and fog moved across the abandoned airfield as dozens of fighter jets started activating. Their engines roared through the darkness. One after another, the aircraft moved out of the giant hangars and began taxiing toward the runway. Inside every cockpit, tall solid black featureless ghost pilots controlled the aircraft, sitting silently as the forgotten fleet prepared for its final mission. Behind them, the dead military crews remained completely still inside the abandoned base. Noah, Mason, and Chloe watched in horror as they realized the military operation that disappeared decades ago was not over. It was finally beginning again. The last fighter jet disappeared beyond the clouds. One by one, the helicopters vanished into the endless darkness until the abandoned military airbase fell completely silent once again. Shaken, Noah, Mason, and Chloe cautiously entered the abandoned control tower, hoping to understand what they had just witnessed. Dust covered every console, while broken monitors flickered with weak signals from a forgotten war. Suddenly, the ancient radar screen powered on by itself. A single line slowly appeared across the display. Mission successful. The three explorers froze. Then another message began typing across the screen, one letter at a time. All human life on base replaced. A freezing silence filled the control tower. Noah, Mason, and Chloe looked at each other in complete horror, unable to understand what the message meant. Then Noah glanced toward the shattered control tower window. Outside, the moonlight illuminated the broken glass. Their bodies were standing there, but none of them had a reflection. The military operation hadn't ended after all. It had simply chosen its next squadron. Today's final story is The Ghost Ship. Emily, Ava, and Sophia, three adventurous friends, explored an abandoned mega cruise terminal that had been permanently closed after one of the world's largest luxury cruise ships mysteriously disappeared during its maiden voyage without sending a single distress signal. Hundreds of passengers and crew vanished without leaving behind a single radio message, lifeboat, or survivor. For decades, the terminal remained completely abandoned. Dust covered the check-in counters, broken luggage lay scattered across the empty halls, and silent boarding gates stood frozen in time. As the three girls cautiously walked deeper inside, a freezing ocean breeze suddenly swept through the deserted terminal. Then, without warning, the old electronic arrival board flickered back to life. Letters slowly appeared across the screen. Cruise 131 now arriving. Emily, Ava, and Sophia stared at the display in complete disbelief. There was only one problem. Cruise 131 had disappeared over 30 years ago. And according to every official record, it was never supposed to return. Emily, Ava, and Sophia rushed toward the terminal windows as a thick blanket of ocean fog slowly rolled across the silent harbor. Then, without a single engine sound, an enormous luxury cruise ship emerged from the darkness. It was far larger than any ship that had ever docked at the terminal. Its exterior looked untouched, yet every deck light glowed with an unnatural pale light. The giant vessel moved silently through the water, creating almost no waves. As it drew closer, the three girls noticed something horrifying. Every deck was crowded with passengers dressed in elegant suits and evening gowns. No one was talking. No one was waving. No one was moving. Hundreds of motionless dead passengers stood perfectly still, all silently facing the abandoned terminal, as if they had been waiting for someone to welcome them home. Emily, Ava, and Sophia stood frozen in disbelief. Cruise 131 hadn't returned with survivors. It had returned with every passenger exactly as they had disappeared, without anyone touching a single control. The massive boarding bridge slowly extended toward the abandoned terminal by itself. A heavy metallic sound echoed through the silent harbor as the bridge locked perfectly into place. Emily, Ava, and Sophia instinctively stepped backward. No one had activated the docking system. No one had boarded the ship. Yet the giant cruise liner had docked on its own. Then the three girls slowly looked toward the ship's bridge. Standing inside were two tall black featureless ghosts wearing faded naval captain uniforms. One silently stood at the massive ship's wheel. The other remained beside the navigation controls. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them moved. Yet, without anyone touching the controls, every radar screen suddenly powered on. Navigation systems lit up. Communication panels flickered to life. Ancient engine indicators glowed across the bridge. The entire luxury cruise ship awakened at once. Emily, Ava, and Sophia could only watch in frozen terror. Because Cruise 131 no longer needed a human captain. Its voyage was now commanded by two tall black featureless ghosts. Emily, Ava, and Sophia slowly stepped deeper into Cruise 131, following the cold silence that filled every corridor. The massive dining hall doors opened with a long, terrifying creak. Inside, a scene frozen in time waited for them. The grand luxury dining hall was still perfectly arranged, with thousands of untouched meals covering the enormous tables. Plates were filled. Glasses remained untouched. Candle flames flickered weakly across the room. But the most horrifying sight was the passengers. Every chair was occupied by a silent dead passenger, still wearing their elegant cruise clothing, frozen forever in the exact position of their final dinner. Some held their glasses. Some rested their hands on the table. None of them moved. None of them breathed. The entire dining hall felt like a moment trapped decades ago. Then Emily, Ava, and Sophia noticed something standing behind every passenger. Tall black featureless ghosts. Silent. Motionless. Watching over the dead passengers as if they were guarding the final memory of Cruise 131. And the three girls realized. The passengers weren't waiting to leave the ship. They were waiting for something to happen. For a moment, everything inside Cruise 131 remained completely silent. Then, a deep, terrifying ship horn suddenly echoed across the dark ocean. The sound traveled through the abandoned terminal, shaking the empty halls and breaking the silence that had surrounded the lost cruise ship for decades. Emily, Ava, and Sophia rushed toward the windows as the massive vessel slowly began moving away from the terminal. The enormous luxury cruise ship pulled back into the black waters, disappearing deeper into the endless ocean fog. High above on the bridge, the two tall black featureless ghosts silently controlled the ship's final voyage. The navigation systems remained active. The ancient instruments continued glowing. The ship followed a path that no human captain could see. Across every deck, the dead passengers remained perfectly still, frozen in their final moments, never speaking, never moving, never leaving their seats. As Cruise 131 vanished into the darkness, Emily, Ava, and Sophia realized the terrifying truth. The ship had not returned to be found. It had only returned to complete its unfinished voyage. For a few moments, Emily, Ava, and Sophia believed the nightmare was finally over. Cruise 131 had disappeared into the endless ocean fog, and the abandoned terminal had returned to complete silence. The three girls slowly turned away from the harbor, hoping they would never see the ship again. But then, the old departure board above the empty terminal suddenly flickered back to life. Dust fell from the forgotten screen as new words slowly appeared. Next passengers, Emily, Ava, Sophia. The three girls froze. Their names were not on a passenger list. They were the only people left in the terminal. Slowly, they turned back toward the ocean. The thick fog began to move. Then one massive ship appeared. Then another. Then dozens more. Hundreds of ghost cruise ships emerged from the darkness, filling the endless horizon. Every ship carried thousands of silent dead passengers. Every bridge was controlled by tall black featureless ghost captains. The ships moved closer without making a sound, waiting for their next voyage. And Emily, Ava, and Sophia finally understood the horrifying truth. Cruise 131 was never the only ghost ship. It was only the first one. This was episode 153 of Dynamic Dark. Which story ruined your night? Tell us in the comments. The most terrifying comment will be pinned. Episode 154 is coming. Indian horror large space chudal stories are even darker and more cursed. Like, subscribe and press the bell icon if you dare to step into the darkness again. Everyday new horror episode at 7:45 p.m. only on Dynamic Dark.